Hello and welcome to Pioneers Technologies Limited. In this video, I'm going to talk about the use of multi-threading to achieve multiple tasks in Java. As you know, multi-threading is about the introduction of a path. When you set a path or you set an action in motion and that action is done in multiple manners, in multiple ways. That is, you are achieving more than one task at the same time. That's multi-threading in the layman language. But in programming, multi-threading is about achieving a task in multiple ways or achieving more than one task at the same time. So that is multi-threading. So I'm going to use the swing worker to display the multi-threaded pattern. So in Java, the Spring Worker is used as a package to display multi-threading. You will have experienced multi-threading in your everyday life when you are streaming a live video and at the same time you are downloading and at the same time you are playing music on your laptop. All these is an example of multi-threading and this is also achievable in Java. In this aspect, we are going to use multi-threading to calculate the primes, that is the prime numbers from a particular input, and will display the prime numbers, and I will also display a taskbar that will show the progress as the prime numbers are being extracted from the input. So we'll display them and we are going to achieve three things at the same time. So in my IntelliJ, I've opened up this class, my main class. I've refactored it to find primes because that's what the class is going to do. The class is going to find the prime numbers. After finding the prime numbers, then I'll display them. After displaying them, I will show the way the prime numbers are extracted, and after showing the way they are extracted, I will show the progress bar showing the level of extraction. And when it gets to the termination point, it reaches 100%. So let's get started and start the journey. So in line two, I've imported, I've put a comment there which is saying that I'm going to use a swing worker to display prime numbers. And when I display the prime numbers, I'm going to also display them as they are found. So that's just a comment. So after displaying them, the next thing is I'm going to calculate the first primes. So I'll calculate the first n primes. When I say n primes, that is the number of prime numbers. And once I do that, I will show them in the progress bar. So I will need to do some import. I'll import some packages. So I'm going to import from Java Extended. Import the swing package. So I will need the text area, that is text area in the swing package. I'll need the JLabel. So after the JLabel, I will also need the J button because I will need to click on the button. So I will need a J button. Then let's import the swing worker. This is going to come from JavaX. And we'll need an array. So let's do the array. So we need to import the array. That array is coming from java.util.arrays. So I'm going to need the arrays first. Then I can also do some randomization. So I'll need to import random from java.util. Then I'll need a list. So I will need a list. So I'll import a list. So some level of concurrency will be needed. So I'll need to import the concurrent package. So I'm going to do the one that I can use to cancel a particular task that has been set in motion. So I'll be generating an exception there. So I'll need cancellation exception, and I will also need execution exception, so that when the execution starts and there's an error in the execution, I'll need to catch that. So I will need to catch that in an execution exception. So these are the packages that I need. They are not yet highlighted. As soon as I start using them, they will be highlighted. So I'll use these find primes. I'll use it to extend my swing worker. So, and I will need some generic variables. So I'll start with integer and I'll use another integer. So these are generics. Whenever you see anything in a triangular bracket, they are generics. So it shows that my variables can take any variable type. So after doing this, after extending the Spring Worker, I will need to now declare some private properties. So let's declare a final property. It means that that is going to be a constant. Anything that is final is a constant. It doesn't change. So I need a generator, meaning a number that I will be using to generate my prime numbers. So I also need another final variable that's going to be from the JText area, so that I'll be able to have an area where I can write something. So I'll call it intermediate JText, intermediate JText area. So that's going to be the object for that. And I will need also the J button, create an object of the J button. It's going to get my prime numbers. I'll call it get primed button. Then I will also need, I didn't spell private correctly, so I need to correct that. So now I will need some variables. So let's get my cancellation button. So it's also going to be a J button. So I will use this one for cancellation. So I'll say cancel J button in case I want to cancel the progress of the search for the prime numbers. So I'm going to have another variable. All these variables are final variables. They are constants. So it's going to be the JLabel. So JLabel is going to display my status label, so that at that point I will need to know the status that I am presently in terms of the search for the numbers. Now I will need an array, because when you are talking about a particular starting point to an end point, you are in one way or the other forming an array because it has a starting point and end point. So it's going to be a boolean, and I'll call them primes. So it's going to return a boolean for me. That is if it's a true or false statement. That is if it's a prime number or not. So it's going to return a boolean. So after having all that, I have some couple of errors. They're going to disappear hopefully as long as I add some code. Let's have a constructor. A constructor is a method that has the same name as the class and is always instantiated every time you create an object of a class. It's always called. It's always invoked. It's always invoked whenever you call an object of a class. Whenever you instantiate a class, that is create an object. So I'll call my constructor prime numbers because it's called find primes. So I'll copy this to save me some typing. So this constructor is going to take some variables. We're going to take the primitive maximum. Then I'll take the JText area. This is going to be the intermediate variable. Then I will need the JLabel. Create an object of that. I'll call that one the status. I will need the J button. I'll need the J button. Let me get some rooms. I'll minimize this. So I'll need the J button. I didn't spell my button properly. So button, that should be Button. This is going to get me my primes. So I also need the J button that I'll use for cancellation. So I'll call this one cancel. So after getting all that, I think I should break it into another line. So after getting all this, I will need to now do some equality. So this is going to be my intermediate. This is going to be my status bar. Get prime going to be this. I'm going to use this for cancellation. And the primes, I'm going to use it to get the maximum. So that's how I'm going to use my constructor. So henceforth, the intermediate object that I have here is going to stand for my intermediate JText area as I've imported it in line 16 and on like that. So the get primes is going to be represented as an object. So all other ones, the status also gotten from the status J label. So all that like that, you know how a constructor is done. So now let's create an arrays field. This is going to tell me if my array is filled up. So that will be the end of my constructor. Then I will need to get a method. This method, I'm going to call it do in background. Of course, you know that for the swing walker, you also need to have the do in background method. And this method is one that's going to find all prime numbers up to the maximum. And it's going to use the sieve of the Eratosthenes. So that is what it's going to do. So now, this my do background method. I'm going to do some local variables. So I'll say counter to be 0. Then I'll run a loop. This loop is going to start from I. So we're going to start from 2. And I'm going to stop at the actual length of the primes. I'm going to stop at the actual length of the primes. And I'm going to iterate by 1. That is, I'm going to increment by 1. So after all that, I'm starting from 2, um, stopping at the exact length, and I'm incrementing by 1. So I will now say that if doing this, if calculation has been cancelled, that is, if the calculation has been cancelled, then what I'm going to do is that I want to return the count. So I want to return the count. So I will return the count. Let's call it count instead of counter because a count is better in this aspect. So I'll call it count. So I'll change this one to count as well. So then if there is no the termination of the calculation, then I'm going to have an else statement. So this else statement is going to set the progress to the following. I'm going to set it to 100, then I'm going to have the increment by 1. So, and after doing that, then I'm going to divide by the length of the whole thing. So there might be some exception that may arise from this while the else statement is being run. So let's do some try block here. So I'm going to have some try catch because an exception might arise as a result of that. So we need to catch that exception. So so let's have a thread. So we're gonna have a thread. We tell the thread to go to sleep while the generator find the next integer. So after that, we can have that. in that aspect. And if there is any exception to be caught, then it's going to be an interrupted exception. I'll catch that as EX. Then I'm gonna have to declare the status JLabel to set the text to the following statement. I'm going to display worker thread is interrupted. So this is going to tell us that the thread has been interrupted, and at the end of the day, it's going to return the count. So the count that was started in this line 15 is being returned at this level so that the count is taken into cognizance. Then if that is done and what we get is a prime, that is if we eventually get at the end of the day is a prime number, so we say if primes, we're able to get the primes, then I'm going to have to publish the, because publish is a method that comes with a do in background. So I'm going to publish the integer as it has come, because actually when I is available for display in prime lists, is going to be published straight up. And after doing that, I'll pre-increment the count. I'll pre-increment the count by 1. And once that is achieved, then I can now do a for loop. So my for loop is going to start from J. I'll make it to move alongside I. So it'll be added to I in that manner. And it's going to terminate at the point where the prime number has a length. And I'm not going to pre-increment J. I'm going to increment J with I so that J goes along with the actual value of I at that point. And when I have this, then I have my primes, so that I can have the J set to false. Because at this time, it shows that I is not prime. And once I is not prime, then I'm going to have to run this for loop. And after all this has been done, actually know that this do in background method is going to now return the count at the end of the day. So because the do in background method is starting from line 34, I'm going to have to return it before the closing of the method, which is going to be line 57. So before the last bracket, that's when it's going to return. Because at the end of the day, do in background is going to return this count that we initialized to be 0 from the onset. So that's how it's going to be. So now the next thing we're going to do is to have a protected method. A protected method is a method that is anything that is protected. It shows that it can be accessed in the subclass as well as in the class. So let's make a protected method. Let's call it done. That is when we are done with the whole thing. Then we want to get the primes. Want to get the primes button, and the prime button is going to be enabled. So we set it to be enabled. So it's going to be enabled. That is when we are done to be enabled. And also we can cancel the set enabled as long as we can terminate it like that in two fell swoop. So the first one will enable the get primes button, and the second one would disable the cancel button, because set when the get primes button starts, the cancellation button must stop. So they are going to be working vice versa in such a way that this one takes an action, this one takes the opposite. So when this one becomes false, this one is going to return true, because the get primes button cannot be enabled when the cancellation button is enabled. So both of them have to work interchangeably. So now I'm going to have this integer, a local a local variable. It's going to be called num-prime. So let's say the number of primes that we want to extract. So the number of primes, there might be some possibility. So we're going to try catch an exception. So we'll try catch it. So when we try catch the exception, then we can do a num primes. So let's have the num primes to get. Let's get it. So num primes, we do it with the get method. So we're going to get the num primes. So after getting the num primes, any error that arises from that is going to be an interrupted exception. I'm going to cache that as EX. And after doing that, after caching it as EX, the next thing is to get the status J label to set the interruption statement. So I'm going to say interruption, I'll say interrupted while waiting for results. Interrupted while waiting for results. And I'm going to return that. So if that is done, we're going to have the catch. So the execution is going to continue in that manner. I need to execute and set the text to this statement. So this statement is going to say error performing calculation. That means there's an error that has arisen as a result of that computation. So I'll say error performing computation. And let's have it return that. So yes, we have to use the return word there. So another exception that may arise that we need to catch is the cancellation exception, because when we cancel it, we may not cancel it properly. So we have to catch that as well. And at the end of the day, we can set the status bar, the status J label, you can set it to this statement. You just say found. What did we found? We found a num primes, and it's actually a prime. Actually a prime. So it's actually a prime. So this prime is going to be put at this junction. So that's that for that cancellation exception. So I have some errors here. I think I have one error for non-primes. I'm gonna have to check where I define my non-primes. Let's go up and see. Oh, this is small letter P. So let's make it capital letter. So that error should go away now. I think non-primes. Okay, I didn't define my non-primes from the onset. So I need to make it num, then capital P. So all things being equal, all errors should be gone now. Let me check again. Num primes. So primes. So it's actually an integer I started with. So I'm setting the text. If I'm setting it as text, that means I must do some initialization of non-primes. Let me initialize it. Yeah, let me initialize it to 0. So that will take care of the error, and I think we can move on. So non-primes has been taken care of because it needs to be initialized at least to a value from the onset. So that's the source of that error. So now we have done that part of our trading. We need to also move along to see how we can now find the prime numbers. So from here, because I would need to do some import, I'll need to go back to my import and put off some J-frames. I'll need some J-frames. So let's import J-frame. I'm going to come from Java X. Then I'll also need to import JText field and to do that. So here I'll need the JText area that has been imported. The J button has been imported. I will need the progress bar here. So let's do the progress bar. Say Java X dot swing. The progress bar comes from swing. So let's go down progress bar JLMPQ. Let's go for J progress bar. Then I'll need the label. I need the J label. So after the J label, I'll need the J panel as well to display my panel. So I'll need the scroll pane to be able to scroll. So I'll need Java X dot swing dot J scroll pane, scroll pane. Also, I'll need to know my pane constant. So I'll get that from Java X dot swing dot scroll pane constant. Then let's get the border layout. So that's Java X dot swing dot. I'm going to get that border layout from Java dot AWT. That is the abstract window toolkit. So that was going to be AWT. I'll get that and I'll get the border layout from there. Then the grid layout too from the same Java dot AWT dot. I'll get the grid layout. This will display the grid. Then there are some actions that must be performed. I'll need to do Java dot AWT. So get that from events. Then I'll get the action listener. I can get the action event as well. Then I can get the concurrent execution exception, and also I've also gotten the execution exception. But one thing I would need to import as well is my property change listener, so that whenever the property of the display changes, I can listen to the change. I'll get that from beans, and that's going to be from property change listener. So that will record. That's a bean. A bean is like an applet. It's a small application that is going to be set into motion anytime there is a change. So I'm going to do some Java dot beans. I'm going to get that from beans, and it's going to be from property change events. So this property change event is to just record any change in the property of the whole class. So this is the import that I'm going to do. So in order to have this, so those are the calculations that we're going to do for finding the primes. But now let's create another class. Within this find primes, I'm going to create another class. This one is going to be the one that will do the final touch on finding the primes. So I'll call it find primes. I'll call it 2. So it's going to be in the same package with the first one. So what I'm going to do from the first is I'm going to bring all the imports, starting from line 4 down to line 25. I'll copy all of them. So then paste all the imports. Then I'm going to say that this is going to extend the JFrame because I'm going to put everything in the JFrame here. Then I can make some objects. These objects are going to be initialized from the onset. So private final JText field is going to get us the highest prime JText field. So I'm going to create an object from that. I'm going to go to new JText field. And after that, I'm going to have another one. This is going to be the button. So private final as well, J button. And this is going to get the primes from the J button. So I'm going to get the primes. Then I'll need to display the text field, display primes for the JText area. So we're going to display the primes for the JText area, not the JText field this time around. Is the JText area. So I'm going to change this to JText area. So now, after that, let's get the one for the button, J button. It's going to be our cancel button. So we're gonna have another one for the progress bar. Gonna have the one for the status bar. But I'm gonna make this one the status bar. Final J label. So it's going to come from J label, and it's going to be the status bar. Then finally, I'll do the one for the calculator, the one that will do the prime calculator. So this my prime calculator is going to be the one that will do the actual calculation. So I'm going to get this. I'm going to do from my J primes. So this is going to be from J primes. So I'm going to do this one. I'm going to make this one to be the calculator here. So that will be what will do the calculation for me, the former class. So let's create some constructors. A single one, actually. So this constructor is going to be the one I'll first of all call the superclass and going to call it by getting the prime numbers, but it's going to do that from the swing worker. Let's set the layout to let's set the layout to an object from the border layout. So after that is set, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to initialize the panel, and that will get us the number from the user. So this will give us the number from the user. So let's tell the JPanel to get us the number. Let's call it the north panel because it's going to be at the top. So I'm going to initialize that. Then north panel, I'm going to make it, I'm going to add it to, I'm going to have the new J label to it so that the new J label will find primes that are less than. So as I said, find primes less than. So that's what this one I can do. Then I'll get the IS. Then the IS from the JText field, that one is going to set the column. I want to have just 5 columns, so I'm going to put 5 here so that I have 5 columns. But I'm not going to use set editable. Set editable is going to return a boolean, but I'm going to use the set column method so that I'll set the columns to 5. So I'll be having 5 columns. Then the not panel is going to have the IS prime JText field. I'm also going to get the primes. Then I'll need to add an event, an action listener. So this action listener will be the new inner class, or you can call it an inner object. This is going to return a method, and this method is going to have a void return type. It's going to listen to an action event, and the progress bar can be set into action. So I'll use the progress bar. So progress bar. So I'm going to use the progress J progress bar. Let me see what I used for it in the onset. Okay, I use the progress bar, so I'm going to use the progress bar in that aspect. So then the status label is going to be setting the text to this. So I'm going to put this down. So the status label, I'm going to set the text to just a simple sentence. Let me just set it to this. So I'm going to set it to status label. I'll make it set the text to a very simple one so that it's going to clear the label. This action performed. So from here, the columns have been set to 5, and I have an action listener. This action listener, I'm going to create an object of the action listener right inside of it that I call the public void action performed method. This is going to set the value of the progress bar. Let's set the value to 0 so that we start from 0. So set it to 0 from the onset. So then we can set the text to a very clean text. That is, we want to clear the JText area. Then here we want to reset the progress bar because when we set the value to 0, we are resetting the progress bar. And after we do that, then we can have our number initialized to, let's say, let's just put number. We're going to have a number, and this number, let's have a try catch because an error may arise from that. So we try and catch the error. So this try, what's going to do for us firstly is to get the user input. So I want to get the user input. So this is going to be the number. I'm going to get a number from whatever the user enters from the get text. So whatever text the user enters is going to be going to be the highest prime text field, and I'm going to pass that to an integer. This is called implicit conversion. So after doing that, an error may arise. Let's catch the error. This might be a number format exception. So that will be recorded as a very simple exception. So let's catch it as a status JLabel status. We're gonna catch that please enter a number so that if the person enters the wrong thing, then we return. But actually, we may need to also construct a new prime calculator object. So what we're gonna do here is just to create, let's create a simple object. Let's call it calculator. It's going to be new prime calculator. New, let's call it, I call it new, let me go and bring my class, new primes. It's going to be new primes, but that was a class. No, I want to copy it. So I'm going to copy this, find primes. So that will be the object that I want to create from this. So then I'll use the number that I've initialized. Then I'll need to display the prime text area. Then have my status label. Then the status label, after that, can get the prime. It's going to get the prime button. I'm going to break this down for purpose of clarity. So prime button. Then I'll call the cancel button all in one fell swoop. And then let's listen to the progress bar. So we're going to listen for progress bar property changes. So if there's any property change, the calculator is going to just, let's add some property listener to it so that if there's any change, that change can be caught. So we can now have our public method that will listen to the property change. And if the change property is progress, then we'll update the progress bar. So say the event, if the event is to get the property name and the property name equals the progress bar, then what we want to do is to now get the progress bar in that manner. So what it's going to do is that if the change property is progress, then we want to update the progress bar right away. So by updating the progress bar, we'll set the value to whatever new value that we have gotten. So let's set it to a new value instead of getting it from the calculator progress. Let's say new value. So I'm going to set it to new value. So this new value is going to come from the event. So because if there's a progress, then I'm going to have a local variable. Let's set a local variable to new value. Then the local variable, by way of typecasting, I'm going to typecast it to an integer. Then I can now say the event should get the event should get the new value, EVT dot, and get the new value. So once that is done, then I can have my progress bar being updated. So if that is done and the property is changed, then there is need for us to close our inner class. This anonymous inner class, we need to close it. And after closing the class, then we need to get the primes J button. This is going to disable get prime button and enable cancel button. So here we are going to now get our primes button and we enable it. So when we enable it, the cancel button is disabled and vice versa. So when we disable, so this is enabled. And after that is done, then we can have our calculator to execute. We can execute the calculator. So once that is done and we're able to execute the calculator, then we have the method execute being called. And what we need to do is now close our inner class, that is the action listener. Then we can set the not panel. So the not panel, just add the get prime button. Then if that is done, let us add the scrollable JList to display result of calculation. So I'm going to have a scrollable JList. How do I do that? I'm going to display prime. I'll set the editable. Sorry. So display this, set the editable to false. And after that, I'll add new scroll pane, new J scroll pane, and I'm gonna say I want to display that J text area. Then after that display is done, then I can add some constants to it. I can add some constant to it because the scrollable J list is being added to display the results of calculation. So when this is done, then all I need to do is just let me put this comma so that I can have some additional constants. Say scroll pane constant, scroll pane constant. Then let me make it vertical so that it becomes a vertical scroll bar at all times. So then I can also add another scroll pane constant, make it horizontal so that when it is horizontal, it is going to be horizontal scroll bar never. Because so once that is done, then I can remove the border layout that I've set to center because it doesn't need to be centralized again. Then I'll put my ending. So I have some red lines. Let's look into that. I think I have the new J scroll pane displaying the primes J text area. Then I'm setting my scroll pane constant. Then setting it to vertical. Then after that, I make it to be horizontal. So I think I have to do some maneuvering here. So maneuvering here. Let me look at the code. So I'm displaying prime text area. Then the scroll pane constant. The vertical scroll bar is always vertical. So I think everything is okay. Then I need to I introduce a local variable. Let me see. No, no need for that. So from this should be a comma, not that should be a comma. So because it is the J scroll pane object is going to require three parameters, and this is the first, and the second, and the third, all separated by a comma. So that's the mistake there. So our error has been dealt with. So let's now go to initialize a panel to display the cancel button. And after that, we're going to have our progress bar and status label. So let's do that from JPanel. Let's call this one South JPanel. So this is going to be called South JPanel. And I'm going to have this object from the JPanel. And let's set the grid. Let's set the grid layout to some four numbers 1, 3, 10, 10. So that will be the rows, the column, the horizontal gap, and the vertical gap, respectively. So now let's do the cancel button that we have created earlier. So let's add an action listener to that. So we're gonna have to first of all enable it. Let's enable the button first before we add an action listener. So we're going to enable it. Set enabled. Okay, let's disable it first so that at the onset it is disabled. Then when an action is being added to it, it can now be enabled. So in this aspect, I'm going to do that cancellation. So I'm going to close my add action listener method. And from here, I can create my salt JPanel or add the cancel button to it. Then the progress bar, I can now set the string to, let's set the string painted to true so that the string will be painted. Then let's also make the South JPanel to be added to the progress bar. Then we also have the status bar as well. Let's add the status bar. It's gonna have the status bar. So that will status J label added to it. And also let's add the not panel. So we're gonna have the not panel. So let's go to the border layout to the north and also the south panel border layout to the south. Let's set the size to let's set the size to 350 by 300 so that become rectangular, and let's set the visible to true. Let's set the visible to true. So once that is done, then we can now enter into the main method. Let's get the main method from that. Let's say public static void main string hash. So here we can now declare our object of these find primes too. Let's create an object from that. So go down to the main method. This is where the whole thing is going to happen. So let's call it application. Then I'm going to create an object. Without creating an object, then let's set for close operation to close. So that ends our class. I'm going to give this a run. Okay, good. So now we have our primes. Let's start the prime. You can see the progress bar is showing is at 0% now at this point. And when we type 1000, it shows that we want to get the prime numbers from 1 to 1000. If I click on this get primes, the status bar will keep on rolling until the thing is done. Let's click on it. You see that? It's generating them. So you can see that it has found 168 prime numbers from 1 to 1000. So that is how it is. And if you observe that some 168 numbers are be found from that point to that point. So if I change it to, let's say, 2000, how many prime numbers are there? Let's click on it. It starts, and how many are they? It tells us that there are 303 prime numbers between 1 to 2000. So that's how we have used our multi-threading. One thread is generating the prime numbers, the other thread is counting the numbers of prime numbers. If you take a close look at the primes, see that when we run it, the numbers that are prime numbers are not being listed. If I take from 1 to 1000, if I get the primes, see the progress bar, then it's not showing the numbers. They are not listed. It's only telling me how many prime numbers are there between 1 and 1000. So what I'm going to do now is to show the numbers. So I'm going to go to my primes, find primes of Java class. Then inside that class, before before this method done, I'm going to introduce a method. It's going to be a protected method, and it's going to return a void return type. This is going to process a list for me, and this is going to be gotten from a list. I'm going to make a generic variable, and this generic variable is going to be an integer variable. So I'll call the class published values. So so the values will be published in this manner. Let's have a for loop, and this for loop is going to start from I to 0. It's going to stop exactly at the size of I, and it's going to increment by 1. So when it increments by 1, I'll make the intermediate JText area to append that published values to that, so that at the end of the day, I can have the values listed. So now we can go to the main method now and run it again. Let's run it again and see. Okay, from 1000, let's get the primes. Oh, that's it. So these are the prime numbers between 1 and 1000. So as you can see, we have it from between 1 down to 1000. The prime numbers have been listed, and as you know, the prime numbers are those numbers that have two factors, themselves and 1, that is, they're divisible by just themselves and 1. So that's what we want to achieve in this video. I will indulge you to subscribe to the channel, share and like, and let others be part of the benefits. Thank you and see you next. Thank you.